Coronation Street's at the earlier time of 7 o'clock this evening, but first, the news.
From ITN, the ITV Evening News with Trevor McDonald.
It's 6:30 on Wednesday evening. Tonight's headlines. Faces of the killers in the high school massacre. Blair hints at a shift in ground war thinking. Attack helicopters fly in to boost NATO's forces. And far from home, a birthday celebration for the Queen. Good evening. America's been expressing its shock and astonishment today after the bloodiest school massacre in its history. President Clinton cancelled a trip to Texas and said the entire country was struggling to understand what had happened at the school near Denver in Colorado. The death toll is now 15. 13 were victims of the teenage gunmen who then killed themselves. Throughout the day, police used robots with cameras to try to find the bombs left around the school by the killers. Survivors described how the gunmen moved through classrooms, shooting indiscriminately. They were both students of the school and were named today as Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. Our correspondent James Mates in Denver has the latest.
It is the morning after, and still the people of this Denver suburb are struggling to accept the evil visited upon them just a few hours ago. The flags have been lowered, the schools closed, the people too stunned to do more than wonder, why us? The bodies of the dead children still lie where they were cut down, but the police do know now just how bad it was.
We have 15 fatalities. That includes 11 males and 4 females. I think there is some mixture of students and possibly at least one faculty member.
There were some more shots fired inside the school.
I have heard shots. We took cover behind our patrol vehicles.
But even that horrifying death toll was not as bad as some had feared, as the two gunmen worked their way through the school intent on killing as many as they could. Their particular targets, blacks, Hispanics, and student athletes.
People were getting shot all around me. There was one boy at a table right next to us.
What's that?
There was a guy at a table right next to us, next to me and her, and they just shot him and then walked away, and then he was just sitting there in a pool of blood.
I just started screaming and crying and telling him not to shoot me. And so we shot the girl, and she shot her in the head in front of me. And he shot the black kid because he was black, and he shot him in the face.
Running across. Before the police could get to them, 18-year-old Eric Harris and 17-year-old Dylan Klebold had shot themselves. They were members of a group calling itself the Trenchcoat Mafia, which even featured in the school yearbook, a group of misfits with fascist sympathies who felt victimized by more successful, more athletic students. As the police moved in, they discovered dozens of pipe bombs had been scattered around the school. Many of the victims' bodies had been booby-trapped. It is still not safe for the police to formally identify them. For the parents of the missing, this has only extended the agony. While last night there were many happy, tearful reunions, those whose children did not appear must still wait for confirmation of the worst. The nation, led by the President, is praying for them.
To the families who have lost their loved ones, to the parents who have lost their beloved children, to the wounded children and their families, to the people of the community of Littleton, I can only say tonight that the prayers of the American people are with you.
This morning there were tales of great heroism, of the teacher who put his students before himself.
He was the first one to start yelling, "Get down, get down, get out, they've got guns." And he stayed standing in order to yell to people to get them out of there, and he got shot.
And tales of survival when all around others were dying.
The whole time I was just waiting for sharp pain just to go through my side or my arm or my leg or...
Were they shooting at just anybody or targeting specific people?
I'm not sure exactly, but I guess they knew some people. They let one person go, so I'm assuming they were looking at faces.
A day of terror and tragedy. After 8 school shootings in 2 years, what have we learned about keeping kids safe?
And amid this epidemic of shootings, people are asking ever more loudly, why? Today, the Colorado legislature was to have debated loosening the state's gun laws. The governor does not accept that lax gun control is to blame.
I think the problem is deeper than guns. It's a culture which sometimes allows too much violence in our media, on our television, on our cable, in our movies.
As the enormity of what happened in this peaceful, affluent suburb sinks in, that debate will intensify. But in the last few years, none of the deaths in America's classrooms have changed the nation's gun laws. And there is no reason to believe that these will either. James Mates, ITN, Denver, Colorado.
The horrific killings in Denver are the latest in a long line of shootings at American schools. For tonight's evening news briefing, John Draper looks at why incidents like this keep happening in America and why it's so difficult to change the country's gun laws.
Call it gun law or gun culture, it's a way of life for many Americans. It's even argued that the US Constitution still upholds the right to bear arms. The weapons industry has the money and power to beat off attempts at gun control. Their TV ads insist that any ban would be a breach of civil rights.
Guns aren't the problem, criminals are. It's time to ban the problem with tough prosecutors, tough judges, and tough prison time. Let's ban the rights of criminals, not the rights of law-abiding Americans.
Law-abiding Americans and the not-so-law-abiding hold more than 200 million guns, nearly one for every single person. Guns were used in almost 10,000 murders in 1997, and a survey found that 8% of high school males carry guns at some point. Even the president's careful not to be seen as anti-guns.
Yeah, I shot them both. They let me shoot them, so I shot them.
So despite the school killings in Kentucky, 3 dead, 5 wounded, at Jonesboro, Arkansas, 5 dead, 10 wounded, and many more, calls for reform were never implemented. Take Colorado's own gun laws. There's no minimum age for someone to own a rifle or shotgun, no waiting period after buying a gun, and no registration details are required from the buyer. People in Dunblane have sent messages of sympathy to Colorado. After the school murders here, all private handguns were banned. That would be resisted in the US. The coming days may see much debate. Gun control is another matter. John Draper, ITN.
James Bates joins us now. James, could you tell us what's happening at the school now?
Well, the police have just told us that they have now identify them. In terms of the motivation of the 2 gunmen, they've searched... I'm sorry, Charlie.
I was saying, as you hinted, it's extraordinary that an event like this won't have any effect at all on the country's gun laws.
No, I'm afraid that is right. You were just hearing from John Draper there just how many guns there are here. They are a cultural phenomenon. The gun debate is very different from the debate in Britain. It's not just a question, as it was with us, of outlawing handguns and removing a few tens of thousands from target shooters. Here in the West, in the Midwest, it's considered an inalienable right to own a gun. And for that reason, you may see some tinkering with the laws, but nothing substantial.
James Mates, thank you. Here, the Prime Minister appeared to make an important, if subtle, shift in his policy on the deployment of Kosovo ground troops today. He clearly told the Commons that all options are still open. Mr. Blair made the comments before flying out for an historic NATO summit in Washington. ITN's Robert Moore reports.
1 month into the air war, and Western leaders are heading to Washington for a summit marking NATO's 50th anniversary, an event now entirely overshadowed by the conflict in Kosovo. Earlier in the House of Commons, Mr. Blair clearly refused to rule out the use of ground troops, insisting all options are open, an apparent shift in tone and language.
The difficulties of a land force invasion of Kosovo against an undegraded Serb military machine are formidable, and they have been all the way through. I've also said in this House before, and I repeat now, that of course Milosevic does not have a veto on NATO action. All options are always kept under review. That is sensible for us to do.
The Defence Secretary George Robertson accused Mr. Milosevic of trying to spread the conflict beyond Yugoslavia's borders in an attempt to destabilise the region.
Milosevic is no respecter of national boundaries. He brought war to Bosnia and Croatia in 1991. He regularly threatens his neighbours, and he's tried in recent weeks to expand the conflict to Albania with incursions across the border.
There is now mounting Western concern at that attempt to export the conflict by creating further flashpoints across the southern Balkans. The flow of Albanian refugees has increased ethnic tensions in Macedonia. Its own delicate ethnic mix has been disrupted. Skirmishes and shelling along the Albanian border also threaten to spread the war there. Finally, in Montenegro, the government is under strain after Yugoslav troops entered a demilitarized zone along its border with Croatia. Amid that regional insecurity, the Bulgarian Prime Minister was seeking guarantees of NATO help if the war spreads. In return, Bulgaria may offer NATO use of its airspace. With the Prime Minister now heading for that historic NATO summit in Washington, it appears the time for those key strategic decisions is now at hand. The air war will certainly continue for many weeks, but the language is shifting towards a reluctant acceptance that a ground-based invasion of Kosovo may be needed prior to any political settlement. Robert Moore, ITN, Downing Street.
The Ministry of Defense confirmed today that NATO jets have largely destroyed President Milosevic's party headquarters in Belgrade. The building was described as one of the nerve centers of the president's killing machine. The top floors of the 23-story block went up in flames. Our correspondent in Belgrade, Julian Mannion, was near the building when it was hit and sent this report under Serbian restrictions.
300 yards from our hotel, the one-time Communist Party headquarters, more recently the base of President Milosevic's Socialist Party, was hit by 3 missiles. The President's party offices are believed to have been evacuated before the NATO air campaign. But the building also contained 3 small television stations, broadcasting entertainment and sport, and a pop radio station belonging to the President's daughter. Emergency workers have been searching parts of the structure for possible victims. So far, there are no reports of casualties, but Yugoslav experts say that the tower block has shifted on its foundations as a result of the blasts. Here in Belgrade, this now heavily damaged building has been a major landmark since the days of communism. Its destruction is a powerful reminder to the population of the city that their defiance over Kosovo could cost them dear. But in spite of the psychological impact of these strikes, there is still very little sign that they are denting Serbian resolve. The explosions went off like thunderclaps in the Belgrade night. Firemen and rescue workers raced to the scene as the 23-story tower block burned fiercely. Near the northern city of Novi Sad, broadcasting facilities were also hit. An attack on TV transmitters apparently halted all television broadcasts in the area. Also in Novi Sad, NATO warplanes heavily damaged the city's 3rd and last remaining bridge across the Danube, effectively cutting the city in 2. And south of Belgrade, the town of Valjevo saw yet another attack on the ammunition factory. The complex was again heavily damaged. Julian Mannion, ITN, Belgrade.
The first wave of U.S. Apache attack helicopters touched down in Albania this afternoon. Another 18 are on their way. Their arrival signals an escalation in NATO's air campaign. ITN's Bill Neely reports now from Tirana.
This war is escalating, and tonight, proof of it. The world's most lethal helicopters flying into Albania, and with them a new ability to strike, not at 15,000 feet, but at 50, anywhere in Kosovo. The Apache helicopters are nicknamed tank busters. They can fly at night at 180 miles an hour and lock on to a target 3 miles away. The arrival of these helicopters heralds a new phase in this war, a campaign that will be waged not on the ground but just above it, as the helicopters fly low, deep into Kosovo, to attack Serb tanks and artillery, closer in than NATO has dared to go thus far. Their firepower is awesome, but flying at 50 feet, they will be highly vulnerable to Serb attack. Arriving with them, another weapon not used before in this war, a ground missile system. It too will be based in northern Albania. It too will give NATO a new ability to strike Serb forces close in. 2,500 troops come with these weapons. In all, 8,000 will soon be ready. They are not here simply to feed refugees. Albania is becoming the base of a large and potentially powerful ground attack force. Bill Neely, ITN, Tirana.
Later in the program, we'll look at dramatic developments in the movement of refugees in the Kosovo crisis. Also coming up on the ITV Evening News, the High Court battle today over this boy's life. Manchester United an hour away from their Juventus showdown. And how the Queen celebrated her 73rd birthday. All that when we come back.
Helen doesn't care that 1 in 5 families in Britain is supplied by Scottish Power, or that we run one of the largest wind farms in Europe. What she does care about is the money she saved by switching both her gas and electricity to Scottish Power, which she spent on a day of fun for her little angels. If you'd like to be Scottish Power, call 0800 400 200.
Not woken up yet? Now you have.
Just off to my bingo pet. Just off to the bingo, darling. Come on, hurry up now. I'm coming. Wait to hear this. You never did. I get our right to... Wait to see this. Hi, Zone.
Girls in bingo, are you game for a laugh?
Softer and smoother. Lurpak spreadable. It's all so sudden.
If you'd like your gas and electricity to be Scottish powered, call 0800 400 200.
Welcome back. The ITV Evening News headlines tonight. The death toll in the Colorado school massacre is now 15. President Clinton says his country is struggling to understand what happened. And Tony Blair is heading for the NATO summit in Washington after saying that all options are still open regarding ground troops in Kosovo. The High Court heard a bitter life or death dispute today over the case of a severely handicapped 12-year-old boy. Doctors had wanted to let David Glass die with dignity by refusing to give him life-saving treatment. His mother wants the court to rule that doctors had no legal right to do so. Sue Saville was in court.
The case centres on whether the clinical judgment of the hospital or the wishes of the family should take precedence. The issue came to a head last October when the hospital caring for a severely handicapped 12-year-old boy gave him the drug diamorphine to alleviate his distress and allow him to die peacefully. The family feared the drug might kill him, and a violent fracas developed as the family attempted to stimulate the boy's breathing. The boy's mother, Carol Glass, is seeking a judicial review to ensure that if her son deteriorates again, he would be entitled to life-saving treatment. David Glass, who's blind and suffers from spastic quadriplegia, was being treated at St Mary's Hospital, Portsmouth, where doctors said all they could do was make him comfortable. His mother wanted to prolong his life as long as possible. In court, lawyers for Carol Glass claimed that the hospital had acted illegally in overruling her wishes. The NHS Trust said that this decision was a clinical judgment and not one for the court. The mother's barrister argued the family's intervention to help the boy breathe had saved his life. The hospital trust's barrister argued the use of the drug had helped in his recovery. The judge will further consider whether to grant a judicial review of the principles when the case continues tomorrow. Sue Saville, ITN at the High Court.
The parents of Stephen Lawrence launched 2 new legal battles today. Neville and Doreen Lawrence are suing the suspects accused of Stephen's murder and the Metropolitan Police for bungling the investigation into his death. It comes one day before the 6th anniversary of Stephen's death and just hours before the deadline for launching civil actions. The election campaign for the new Scottish Parliament focused on unemployment today. New UK-wide figures showed another rise in those out of work. The Scottish National Party said unemployment was hitting Scottish people hard. The Labour Party said unemployment in Scotland is actually falling. Harry Smith reports.
The SNP at Hampden Park, launching their youth manifesto, blamed the big rise in the number of Scots claiming unemployment benefit on Labour's mismanagement.
These are devastating figures. I mean, another 1,200 jobs gone in Scotland, and this is what the government should be focusing on.
Labour hit back, unveiling a study showing that an independent Scotland would have to raise taxes or cut spending. They also defended their own record of creating new jobs.
Not only have we delivered a reduction in unemployment, we've also increased the number of jobs in Scotland, and there are 17,000 more Scots in employment than when Labour came to power.
But the Liberal Democrats said that was a claim which didn't stand up.
Since Labour came to power, Scotland has been losing 1 job almost every hour. Now that is nothing for the Labour Party to crow about.
Up to now, the Conservatives have stayed firmly in Edinburgh for their daily election briefings, but today they brought their campaign into the heart of Labour territory here in Glasgow. They were launching their plan for a crackdown on drugs. They also launched a scathing attack on the Liberal Democrats, who yesterday appeared to suggest that decriminalising cannabis is one option they might have to consider.
You're sending exactly the wrong signal to people at the present time if you go down that strand.
Tomorrow all the parties begin stepping up their campaigns with exactly 2 weeks to go before polling. Harry Smith, ITN, Glasgow.
The elections for the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly take place on May the 6th. Football and Manchester United are gearing up for tonight's big game in Turin against Juventus. But it's still not known if their key player Ryan Giggs is fit enough to play. Last night he sat on the sidelines while the squad trained, an ice pack strapped to his ankle. Manchester United need all the goal-scoring power they can muster after their 1-1 draw in the first leg at Old Trafford. A win in Turin would secure their first European Cup final place since 1968. Coverage of the game starts at 7:30 on ITV tonight. The Queen has been celebrating her 73rd birthday today, thousands of miles from home. She and the Duke of Edinburgh are on a state visit to South Korea. So our correspondent Tom Bradby explains the local festivities were a far cry from the usual birthday celebrations at Windsor.
Under the Korean sun, the Queen was celebrating her birthday today in very different style. The villagers put on a traditional masked dance before giving her, if not a birthday cake, then the Korean equivalent, a table loaded with food. There wasn't time to eat it, but they didn't let her go without giving her a crown, albeit a rather smaller one than she's used to. This has been a packed tour, but the Koreans have been exceptionally appreciative. This century they've survived Japanese occupation, 2 wars and years of military rule. They see this visit as confirmation by a major Western power that they are now one of the most stable forces in the region. The Koreans acknowledge that for many this may seem just another royal visit, albeit a very tiring one, but for them it is highly significant because of what it says about the position their country has reached. The pace of the visit was last night clearly taking its toll, but this morning the Duke of Edinburgh seemed revitalised as he toured the border with communist North Korea, still one of the tensest in the world. Tonight they were celebrating together at a concert. Not even the Queen could avoid a more traditional birthday moment. Tom Bradby, ITN, Seoul.
To end our programme tonight, we return to Kosovo for a report on the latest on the refugee crisis. In Albania, a major airlift has begun to move refugees away from border camps and away from Serb army shells. As our correspondent Mark Austin reports, the first of the refugees have boarded American Chinook helicopters to be flown south to safety.
Into the mountainous border region with Kosovo flew the NATO helicopters late this afternoon. This is an operation more symbolic than significant. They are taking out only 200 refugees today, but are promising to airlift thousands more in the coming days. NATO is desperate to help ease a refugee crisis it has so far been unable to stop. With another flood of ethnic Albanians expected to pour out of Kosovo at any time, relief agencies here fear they will be overwhelmed and are trying to move tens of thousands into camps in other parts of Albania. And there's another reason. NATO officials and aid workers are increasingly concerned about the security of refugees so close to the border with Kosovo. All along this border, things are tense and dangerous. Serb shelling and incursions are on the increase. And in the last 36 hours, there have been new clashes between Serb and Albanian forces. No refugee area has been hit yet, but NATO troops are now deployed in northern Albania, including a detachment of the Royal Signals. And today, the British general commanding NATO's forces here said his priority was to move refugees to safer territory.
We don't want them in range of artillery fire. There's been the harassment, and clearly, they could become a target. So we don't want them to be in a target area, so we want to get them outside of the artillery range. Also up here, the conditions are not good.
Not good for 150,000 refugees struggling to survive in camps fast becoming quagmires. But NATO's now doing its bit to help, moving refugees to safety, but taking them further away from home. Mark Austin, ITN, on the Kosovo-Albanian border.
Tonight's headlines again. The death toll in the American high school shooting is now confirmed at 15. President Clinton said today the entire country was struggling to understand what had happened. And Tony Blair has flown out to Washington for an historic NATO summit. Next from ITN is the ITV Nightly News with Dermot Monahan at 11. But we leave you now with images from two of the stories which dominate today's news. From all of us on the ITV Evening News, goodbye.
All options are always kept under review.
The prayers of the American people are with you.
Good evening. Some eastern counties got away with it for most of today. The showers have been mostly in central and western parts, but now the showers are almost everywhere, and they will be again tomorrow. A mixture of sunny spells and blustery showers. Though in the west today you've had generally grey skies. At least tomorrow I think you'll have some sunnier spells in between those showers. You can see on the satellite picture how the cloud has been building up through the afternoon. Most of Britain is cloudy now. Not all of the cloud producing rain, but we can use the Met Office weather radar to scan inside the cloud and see where the showers are falling. And just now they're falling, well, almost everywhere, as you can see, and they're moving further east, so there's heavier bursts of rain coming to eastern counties, I think, through this evening. So overnight then, lots of showers through this evening, as we've seen, but as we go through the night, many central and eastern parts will become mostly dry again, just one or two showers finding their way inland on those rather fresh winds. But in the north and west, I think the showers will be fairly frequent pretty much through the night. That's where you're close to the area of low pressure. And then tomorrow, as we said, a day very much like today. Some sunny spells around, the best of them through the morning in central and eastern parts. Already showers in the west. As we go through the day, the showers developing more widely, I think. Even central and eastern parts seeing the odd downpour through the day. But still some sunny spells, and western parts of Britain tomorrow not quite as grey as they were today. Certainly I think western parts of England and Wales will see some better sunny spells in between those showers. It is another fairly breezy day tomorrow. It won't be quite as blustery as today, so temperatures around 14 or 15 in places, feeling fairly mild, I think, compared with what we've had over recent weeks. But it's still a blustery and showery day. Slightly better conditions, I think, coming along for Friday. Here's a summary.
Power Gen. Power, whatever the weather.
Working for the biggest club in the world, that gives you great motivation.